Hello everyone, this is Bob and Threadbare, and welcome back to Deus Ex. So I said we'd be taking the elevator this time, but... nah. We're doing something else. We got a couple other things to take care of before we leave. Some shells, and of course, this is going to be a little tricky since I can't climb up onto the pipe from this side, but there are other ways. Gotta get it close, but not too close. And then far, and then more far away. That's good. I took care of one of the turrets in the bargain. Didn't get the top ones, but that's okay. Crouching works fine. So, now that we're back out of here, first things first, I forgot to tell Mr. Renton about his daughter. I figure he ought to know about that.
Well, I'm glad they made it.
I mean, both of them can die the first time you meet them.
I saw your daughter Sandra down the block. She didn't look so good.
Sandra? Was she coming back to the hotel?
I ran off a thug who was harassing her, but she's still mixed up in some pretty nasty business. You better talk to her.
No more talking. If you see her, tell her I don't care what she's been doing. She can come home. No questions, no speeches.
I'll tell her she can trust you.
Well, that's mostly what he had to say before, but he's got a few more things to say.
I should probably go find her. Oh, I don't know. Maybe she'll come in from the fighting. Why'd she have to do this to me? Thanks for looking out for her.
You know, it's a little creepy when the body is just sort of lying there behind him, still. And come on, come on. I bounced off the rim, but it was enough for the secret message, so it's enough for me. Now, we're getting this done, but actually we're going to be starting on the ground floor this time.
Watch for lambs. I'm picking up sonic transducer activity. I'm sending you a satellite image that should help you plan your approach.
You can see the first one right there. As for the images, well, it's a little more useful if you're taking the rooftops. Lots of people there, not many lambs to see, on the image at least. Plenty to see if you're walking around down here. Well, you can see by the ladder here that we can actually go straight up back to the rooftops. That's why I started down here. It means I don't have to double back just to get that lamb. Of course, I can also jump over this fence here and continue on the ground level. But, not gonna do that. There's also stuff up on the rooftops, and I've decided the most efficient way to show off all the different places you can go here is to go top to bottom. Now there's a guy just behind it between the chimneys here. Now that got him, but got a little more attention from someone else. Luckily he just winged my arm. Now the real tricky thing about this particular map is that there's all these area location bonuses and such. Transmissions here and there.
Heads up, JC. We've got NSF troops on the rooftops.
And it's all about walking into just the right spot, so that's what I'm going to be doing a lot of over this next video. Is basically walking to every last corner of the map, because there's 30 to 40 to 50 points in it for me every time I do so. That window, by the way, is another way in, as much as it's another way out. The reason you come in here is a prod charter and a medkit. Fortunately for me, I happen to need one. Now the thing about this first rooftop here, along with that first area down on the ground level, is that this is a point of no return, in a sense. Once you jump off this area here, There's really no going back. But there are ways and there are ways, and I'll be getting to that soon enough. Until then, I figured I'd show you what my baby can really do. Especially with that laser sight on there, it's a lot more helpful than you'd really expect it to be. See, the thing about the laser sight is that it does not make your weapon perfectly 100% accurate when it's on, but it gets pretty close. And it's a hell of a lot more accurate than the weapon ought to be when the brackets are wide out and... They got some weird billboards out here these days. So this is right here is what I was talking about with getting back inside. And down here we have what I was talking about with the point of no return. Once you drop down here, there's no way back up onto that first building. There are some pipes down there that you can actually use to transition back to the ground level, but it's risky and it's kind of pointless because, like I said, I'm doing top-down approach. I have no idea why there are so many people with assault rifles around here. There, you see that? Laser sight. Not perfect, but pretty damn good. The only question is, which way do I go first from here? Well, I figure I'll go up onto the rooftop, where the one guy had a sniper rifle. Kinda weird I missed him like that, but I got him eventually. Oh, and down there you can see there's another way down to the ground, a ladder, much safer than using the pipes.
Look for the building with the antennas.
Yeah, no problem. I already found that one. Oh, but here we got some stained glass. That lets us get in here. Not too much to find down here. You gotta remember to look in all the little corners. Yeah, yep, here we go. I didn't need it, but well, it would have been a wasted medkit anyhow. Nothing else of interest, so let's go. I mean, there's that window, but there are other ways onto that particular fire escape. Now that one I pretty much have to waste. No use there at all. And I could have actually shot that window out from the other side and jumped across, but yeah, you get the bonus just for standing there. It's pretty neat. Whoops. Apparently that fall was loud enough to get somebody's attention. But yeah, we're on the last bit just before the warehouse itself, and let me show you what WP does. Good old Willie Pete. A fountain of white phosphorus. The chief advantage and disadvantage of WP rounds is that it has an incredible radius of effect. That's an advantage because it kills a whole lot of people with just one shot. Much more than you'd hit with just a regular explosive round. The disadvantage is that you might not be expecting that and thereby set yourself on fire and die horribly. So, you know, just keep that in mind. Ah, dogs. Not like most video games, dogs are surprisingly dangerous. That's why I'm taking the no survivors approach here. That, and like I said, it's down to check out this street level. But first, the warehouse itself is actually a lot easier to deal with if you take it from the top down. I don't know if that guy saw me, but if he did, he's going to charge up that ramp, and I can't have him turning on the alarm by tripping that laser beam there. Of course, if he's not going to do anything, then I'll just take my 20 points for getting up here. Maybe rob this guy of his sniper rifle ammo. Nice. And now I'll see about going down there and slaughtering every last poor NSF terrorist who decided to camp inside. Oh, by the way, I actually don't have to do that. If I climb down this ladder here, I will get to a place that will let me win this mission immediately. So as of right now, this is all bonus time.
Forget it. I was hearing things.
Now that worked. Unfortunately, the way this warehouse, why do I keep calling it a factory? The way this warehouse works is that as soon as you start shooting somebody, the level below it will hear what the hell's going on. And then stuff like this will start happening. You can hear someone else coming now, too. So I figure it's time to show off what the sawed-off shotgun can really do. Just as soon as the brackets close up. And it kills them in one at close range, but uh-oh. Alright, that got my ballistic armor activated, but my damn shotgun became unequipped. Thanks a lot. Boy, this game sometimes it's real complicated. Still, at least I managed to find a real use for my ballistic armor. Plus, I guess it turns out that if you turn it on from the inventory, that you don't have to hear that annoying whining noise it makes when it's active. Oh, more guys. But like I said, it attracted everybody that's on the floor I'm standing on. Which explains why the only survivors are currently a floor below me. Of course, that's going to change pretty soon. Everybody heard those shots, and now they're going to be running up the ramps, try and deal with me. But that's going to do them no good whatsoever. Here we are. Oh, bonus. I thought there were only two of you guys. Okay, and now, by the way, I can also win this mission immediately. See, there's a bunch of explosive barrels down there, and that giant glowing thing in the center, that's what I'm supposed to explode. So quite naturally, if I blow up something next to it, or just use a rocket, for that matter, and someone set off an alarm, or is that just me? Anyway, I could win right now if I wanted to. Also, I can use this computer and win right now if I wanted to as well. And this is what I was talking about earlier. You see this window? Pretty crappy secret door. Let's see out here, and that ladder leads back up to the roof. And so that's how you get this mission done if you just want to sneak your way through. If you're doing something pacifist, for instance. But I'm not. Oh, surviving dog. Oh well. Sure there weren't very many of them left. After all the Willy Pete I dropped down here. Yep. And that's the key to the door. We'll explore the ground floor later. See, we'll actually be coming back here once we're done on the streets too. And over here we've got 40 skill points, a camera, a turret, and pretty much nothing else. So I came in for the skills and nothing else. And down this way we've got lambs, and I didn't actually miss the lambs and get exploded again. It's more that I had trouble figuring out exactly how I was going to get back up to the rooftops. See, I happened to miss one of those data cubes. But until then, we've got that lamb over there, but also surrounded by explosive barrels. And if I happen to land down there, the lamb will go off instantly. So I'm going to take care of this in a safer manner. I'm ducking around the side. Also, for some reason, it doesn't always award you those 40 points for blowing up the wall. Remember, I threw a lamb down there and tried to escape upwards, and it didn't give me any points at all. Weird. Anyhow, we've got these laser beams, that turret back there, and an electrical field, which will sap our bioenergy. Don't really want to do that. And this is the other side of the point of no return here. You can get over this fence to get over there, but, well, maybe it's not a complete point of no return. See, the funny thing about lambs is that they exist in the world. They have geometry, and you can use them to climb. Gotta be real careful where you place it, though. Just high enough to get some real boost, but also low enough that you can actually jump on it. And with that, I could get back to Hell's Kitchen anytime I wanted to. But I don't. So far as I know, I've gotten everything out of Hell's Kitchen that I need. So I'm just gonna pocket the lambs and go back up to the rooftops to get that last data cube I forgot. Here it is. Can't believe I overlooked this thing. I found it on all of my practice runs. Sacrilicious. So if you're wondering why I haven't cut immediately back down to the ground floor, it's because I've decided to take an alternate route. I'm not going to take that ladder that I took up here. Of course, I won't make that decision until I actually get over here, because you can use this to get up onto the ledge and then crawl around the entire building to get over there. But no, I figure I'll just demo how the pipes work here. Not to mention the fact that these are extremely dangerous. Do not try this at home. Especially with how they, I missed one. Man, look at all that damage. Well, what are medkits for? Except to make up for my mistakes. So, now with all of that done, it's time to take the third route into the factory. God damn it. Warehouse! Into the warehouse. See, there's this underground/underwater area down here. You can blow up the busted wall. Climb up through here. Miss another data cube. I'm just all over the place in this recording. Now this says the basement ramp is 2577. But hey, it works here too. That's pretty nice. Of course, I can't jump over that beam. And I'm staring down a turret, so I've decided to take the alternate route past that particular section. It involves climbing across this pipe, turning the valve, and then opening another passageway down there. Of course, there's no way to go through that passageway without taking a lot of drowning damage, if you're untrained. So let's train that up. It's as good a time as any. You can already see the improvement in swimming speed. That and O2 is dropping a hell of a lot slower. And hey, 20 points for taking the alternate route. This is really what I was getting at. They throw points at you no matter which route you take, so when you really take the time and explore, you get a hell of a lot of points. And here's the warehouse. That's the generator right up behind that grate. Locked. But luckily we've got the security terminal right here. And now I haven't been told that NSF is the login code. But, I mean, it is pretty obvious anyway. And we did get righteous before, and... oh, there's a dude there. Huh. I guess he must have been the survivor who tripped the alarm. Well, that's downright helpful. Plus it lets me come back this way and get another 30 points. Nice and safe. Just how I like it. Now this basement area here is actually pretty full of stuff. There's apparently another set of lasers on a different network. Not to mention all of these additional cameras here. And by the way, that camera there in the corner that I just ducked away from, so far as I've been able to see, there is no security console that can turn it off. So I'm going to turn it off with a little alternate means. A little thing I like to call explosive decommissioning. Of course, there are all these other cameras around here. Gonna have to find that second security console to deal with that. Until then, this is actually that ramp from earlier. And yet another way to actually go up onto that platform there, sneak around everybody, and take out the generator. Or you could just take one of the ramps up here onto the ground floor, throw out a rocket or something, doesn't really matter. Speaking of doesn't really matter, I just set off the alarm. But who cares? There's nothing down here left that can hurt me. And thanks to that code we got on the roof, we can get into this particular room here. Use the second terminal and turn off 2 more cameras. The third one there, it overlaps with the other console. I guess there must be another room down here. More lambs. And in fact, I feel like using one. But first, we'll check in with the computer. Got a couple of emails of interest here. Looks like they're trying to bug out with some of the ambrosia. Can't let that happen. Now the funny thing about this room actually is that the code to enter it is only on one side. Only at one of the 2 doors. The other door, actually, doesn't matter. You can just, it's completely unlocked. If you can sneak around the camera, you can get right at it. Or if you ignore the camera, for that matter. But we did get a key from inside the one room, and this is what it's for. The other room. Now I can blow up those barrels in order to get rid of the toxic gas, but that'll take forever, and I don't feel like taking forever. So I just turned on toxic resist, powered through it, and that got rid of all the remaining lasers in this entire warehouse. I didn't say factory that time. This is a warehouse. I believe, in fact, that is everything. So I'll just go back here, show you that yes, in fact, there's a data cube that tells you that the password is NSF righteous. And now that that's done, it's finally time to take out this warehouse for good. Well, not the warehouse. Take out the generator for good. Warehouse can remain standing. They're good people. Now, like I said, there's the easy way of dealing with this, which is just to, blow up any one of these barrels, shoot a rocket, pretty much any means of generating an explosion will work, but there's another method we can employ. The sort of sneaky hacker pacifists method. And I figure I'll show you how that works, because it's a little more interesting than just shooting that barrel and watching the whole thing explode. Don't worry, things will explode. Instead, we'll just type in the password and shut down the cooling systems, and now it's doomed. Get up to a safe distance so I can watch the magic.
Good job, JC. The power just died at the NSF headquarters. Now it's up to Paul. Go to the roof. A chopper is arriving with Agent Herman on board. He will lock down the warehouse while you take the chopper back to HQ.
Oh, by the way, so there's also this one beam here, and you can actually get around it without having to turn it off. It's pretty simple. So you just jump onto the railing, and there you go.
Mandoli has assigned me the peacekeeping occupation of this district.
I took care of the generator. How's the raid going?
They should have sent Agent Navarre. Your brother is timid like a child.
Did something go wrong?
You do not need to hear anything from me. Take the helicopter back to base. I am sure Mandoli has planned a debriefing for the top agents.
Isn't he getting passive-aggressive?
I do not need assistance. The helicopter is waiting. Learn your lesson from Paul. A simple job. They have me doing the work of bots. You will be bored if you stay here with me. You will be bored if you stay here with me.
Well, now that I've cleaned the place out, he's right.
Last boarding call, Unatco HQ.
Hey, you're the guy I talked to at the Underworld bar, right? The one asking for beer.
You don't want to fly one of these birds all wound up. They have a temperament, especially in a crosswind.
This seems unwise.
Let's go.
But it's not like I have much of a choice. Now that we're heading back to Unatco, this time we'll be heading back to Conspiracy Corner. So, do any of you remember this book we found at Smuggler's Place? Because today we'll be talking about the Society of the Cincinnati and the origins of the modern constitutional republic. Cincinnatus and the Roman Republic. First, let me start with a little background on how the Roman Republic worked. The system was a complicated series of legislative groups and executive positions with overlapping powers and authority. And this was intentional, a means of keeping individual power in check. Ultimately, though, it can be boiled down to the assemblies, whose members were voted in by the lower classes of Roman citizens, the plebeians, and the Senate, whose members were appointed from the Roman aristocracy, the patricians. Officially, the assemblies wrote the laws, and the Senate issued advice, but in practice both bodies were obeyed equally. The Senate couldn't overwrite the assembly's laws, but they could interpret them, and also rule on areas the assemblies didn't touch. The highest officials of the Roman Republic were the consuls, 2 men who were elected by the military assembly to simultaneous 1-year terms. Each consul had the power to enact and enforce the laws, to make changes to the governmental system of the Republic, and also to preside over wars. But they both had the power of veto over each other's actions. No one was allowed to sit for consecutive terms, and there were other checks and balances involved as well, but that's the short version. However, there was another position with more power than the consuls, the dictator. The dictator had absolute power over the Roman state, but the position was only meant to be filled in times of crisis, such as when barbarian hordes were bearing down on the city of Rome itself. After all, desperate times call for desperate measures. Over the centuries, Rome appointed dozens of dictators to fight wars within the Italian peninsula, but Cincinnatus was special, or more properly, Cincinnatus, because the Latin C is always a K sound. When he was elected dictator, Cincinnatus had already been financially ruined in order to save his son from execution, and was supposedly plowing his small farm personally when the senators came to tell him the news. While the office of dictator held broad powers he could have used to confiscate property and execute the men who orchestrated his downfall, the only things Cincinnatus did were to raise an army to deal with the war he was elected to fight, win a single decisive battle, and then resign, 15 days into his 6-month term. And just to top it all off, he was elected as dictator again 19 years later to end a supposed conspiracy by Spurius Malleus to become king. Cincinnatus had the man executed and then stepped down immediately. Just as a side note, and for a little contrast, the beginning of the end of the Roman Republic wasn't when Julius Caesar declared himself dictator for life. It actually began a generation before him, when Marcus Livius Drusus tried to expand Roman citizenship to include all the Italian peninsula, but was so fiercely opposed that he wound up assassinated before his 1-year term as consul could end. Once it was determined that Roman citizenship would not expand along with Roman conquests, it was really just a matter of time before one faction or another would gather enough power to take over permanently. In fact, the decade following Drusus's assassination was filled with power plays and civil wars, and capped off by Lucius Cornelius Sulla becoming the first dictator in 120 years and the first dictator ever appointed to rewrite the Constitution. Much of what he did was repealed once he left office, but Julius Caesar began his rise to power only 30 years later. The roots of American democracy. The Constitution of the United States did not form out of a vacuum, nor did it leap over 1.5 millennia straight from ancient Rome. Its parent nation, England, was actually going through the process of democratizing itself at the time. The Magna Carta of 1215 is a landmark document in establishing the rights of the nobility in the face of a centralizing kingdom, but the real turning point came during the Glorious Revolution of 1688. The politics at the time were heavily bound into the Protestant Reformation, but more importantly, it involved the English Parliament hiring the Dutchman William of Orange, along with his army, to be a figurehead king in exchange for being, well, king at all. The Bill of Rights William signed stripped the crown of the ability to interfere in lawmaking, levy taxes, maintain an army, or do anything to interfere with a parliament's governance. It would take over 2 centuries before the right to vote for MPs was extended to every citizen, however. Closer at hand was the Iroquois Confederacy. The Iroquois were, and still are somewhat, an alliance of 5 and later 6 tribes, which formed before European contact and managed to gain and maintain power in the eastern Great Lakes region for far longer than any of its neighbors. At its height, the Confederacy claimed lands as far south as Kentucky and as far west as Illinois. But the expanding English colonies eventually put too much pressure on the tribes, and it wasn't long after the Revolutionary War that the Iroquois would run out of land they could claim as sovereign. Still, the organization that predates Plymouth Rock remains in existence to this day. There were a few notable things about the Iroquois government. The first is that power ran from the community to the nation, rather than the other way around. The Grand Council of Chiefs was not a central government so much as it was a body which organized its constituent communities and dealt with exterior nations. Instead, villages and towns would generally govern themselves. As such, laws came from the consensus of the group, and not from an autocratic or aristocratic few. Another thing is that women were treated as separate from the men, but both genders had an equal share of power. For example, treaties and declarations of war needed a 75% supermajority of both men and mothers before it could be accepted, and Grand Council chiefs were appointed by clan matrons, who had the power to remove them from office at any time. Most important, however, were the pluralistic traditions of the colonies themselves. See, while everyone talks about the democratic cornerstones of free speech, free assembly, fair contracts, and universal suffrage, and those are important, make no mistake, something that's maybe even more important, but gets overlooked a lot, is the right to free movement. After all, if you're being oppressed and you can just up and leave, you'll up and leave. Slaves and serfs who are tied to the land they work don't have that freedom, but the early English colonists had the option to simply fuck off and join the Indians whenever they didn't like what the governor was doing. As such, the colony leaders had to grant more freedoms than usual to get anyone to stick around and do the work, and that tradition carried right on down to the founding of the United States. It's also been true about other colonies that weren't based around oppressing the locals, like Australia and New Zealand. The Society of the Cincinnati. As the American Revolutionary War was ending, Major General Henry Knox got together with a few of his war buddies and decided to put the Society of the Cincinnati together, basically as a way to keep in touch. Membership was extended to officers in the Continental Army, Navy, and even a few French officers who participated in the war. Cincinnatus was honored because he accepted power from a Republican government, used it as far as it was necessary, and then relinquished it the second he was no longer needed. Of course, throwing around the word dictator, especially when all your members are officers in the armed forces and membership is passed down by primogeniture, which is to say every firstborn son, it's not a good way to avoid suspicion. Oh, and the Society's president also happens to be George Washington, first president of the United States. Soon after the Society was formed, it came under attack as a suspected means of establishing a new class of nobility, and as you saw from Smuggler's book, there's still a thought that the Society is ever watching the government, waiting for the moment they may be needed to establish a dictatorship. The Society is still around today, but these days it's simply a non-profit historical group, which maintains a headquarters and Revolutionary War Museum in the Anderson House in Washington, D.C. A number of U.S. presidents have been honorary members over the years, but that's because for a while becoming president entitled you to honorary membership. Really, aside from a neat little emblem and probably a few letters every year begging for donations, there isn't much to the Society of the Cincinnati. Certainly not anything more than what it started as. Personal thoughts. The core principles of democracy can be summed up in one word: distrust. After all, if you could really trust your government, then it'd be fine to have an absolute monarch whose word is law and whose edicts are obeyed to the letter. But the fact of the matter is that no one can be trusted with that much power, especially with zero accountability, and even if someone incorruptible were sitting in that big seat, he or she would still need to hand out dirty favors to the people with the ability to unseat them, one way or another. Therefore, the only reasonable thing to do is to bring about universal suffrage and terms in office so that the power to unseat a ruler is given to those ruled, and thus we all get to benefit from dirty favors. But the distrust must remain. We get free speech so we can know what other people think. We get free press so we know what's going on. We get free assembly so we can figure out what to do. We get fair contracts because we can't trust each other. We get universal suffrage so we can kick out whoever needs the boot, and we get free movement so that if all else fails, we can at least go somewhere better. As for American democracy, the closest we ever got to a dictatorship was when Abraham Lincoln and General-in-Chief George McClellan were butting heads over whether to abolish slavery if and when the Confederacy surrendered. There were indications that McClellan was intentionally sabotaging the war effort to keep the South on its feet, and he wrote his wife a few letters that showed he was considering a coup d'etat against the civilian government. But Lincoln relieved him of command for going over his head, and that was that. So far as I can tell, George McClellan was never a member of the Society of the Cincinnati, nor any other society more suspicious than the American Democratic Party. These days, I'll admit the state of politics in America isn't pretty, but never is. No place, no time. But one benefit of studying history is that I can look back at the Roman democracy and think to myself, thank goodness I live under such a straightforward system with a remarkably low number of exilings, confiscations, beatings, executions, and assassinations. Oh yeah, and one more thing. Yes, Cincinnati, Ohio is named after the Society of the Cincinnati. One of the members became governor of Ohio, renamed a tiny village, and encouraged his fellows to settle there. Nothing more to it than that. Thanks for joining me again in Conspiracy Corner, and I hope I'll see you soon.